So when you work to balance law and grace in your mind, always remember this, folks. God is always ruled by law and always saved by grace. Old Testament, he is always ruled by law and saved by grace. And if you think grace only came alive at the cross, you ask Abraham when you get to heaven how he got to heaven. By faith. By faith. Before I did anything good or bad, by faith. When you get to heaven, ask David if grace was alive in the Old Testament. You know through David's life that grace was alive. In Genesis 15, we find God making this formal covenant with Abram. Fascinating. God tells Abram to get 5 animals. Do we have some pictures first before that? There we go. Thank you. In Genesis 15, we find God making his formal covenant with Abram. God tells Abram to get 5 animals and cut them down the middle, to have them. And then the 2 parties, God and Abram, were to walk down the middle in between these halved animals and make a vow together as they walked between these dead animals. And the idea was, as you walked together between these cut in half animals, that both parties were saying in effect, as they walked down the middle, may the same be done to me. May I be killed and cut in two if I break my end of this agreement. This was done not only in Israel, outside of Israel. In fact, if you've ever heard the phrase to cut a deal, you ever hear that phrase, cut a deal? This is where that comes from. That you're making an agreement, you're cutting the animals in half, and if you break it, you will be treated as are they. But there's something interesting. When God made this covenant with Abram, it wasn't carried out the way it was supposed to be. In Genesis 15, verse 10, it says, so Abram presented all these to him, these animals, and killed them. Then he cut each animal down the middle and laid the halves side by side with a pathway between. However, he did not cut the birds in half. Going down to verse 17, it says this, after the sun went down, it says that Abram had been was asleep. After the sun went down and darkness fell, Abram saw a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch pass between the halves of the carcasses. It was God. So the Lord made a covenant with Abram that day and said, I have given this land to your descendants all the way from the border of Egypt to the great Euphrates River. Now, a question. Did Abram walk with God in between those animals, vowing his part in that covenant? No, he was asleep. God was the only one that walked that path. So what God was demonstrating was that by not asking Abram to be a part of that agreement, listen closely, God was saying, and so shall be done to me if either of us break our part of the agreement. So shall be done to me if either of us break our part of this agreement. And that's exactly what Jesus did. We broke our part of the agreement. And the covenant was made only one-sided by God. And he kept his part. We broke it, and he died. We broke it, and Jesus went to the cross. Because we were not part of that.
You don't want to miss next week.